We are letting everybody in the room now. Absolutely love the fact that we have so many people joining us. What I'd love for you to do is we're getting everybody situated. I see a Susan Davis jumping in here and smiling. If you will put in the chat as we get started today, just let Tim and I know, where are you dialing in from? Brian Porta. Man, I tell you what, buddy, it's good to see you on here. Hey, since you already have the book, don't take yourself off mute, but I'm going to call on you today. I got a couple questions. Tim and I want to make sure you answer them. So I hope you've already read it for us. He's got it right there. I love it. I love it. So go ahead, put in the chat for us where you're dialing in from today. And we're going to get started in just a minute. Still have some people rolling in here. Want to let that happen so that we don't miss anybody. 7:30 a.m. All right. We will today have a couple of different team members that will be managing the chat for us. And I'm going to let you, I'll talk about this in just a minute, but Tim is going to give some high level content around this content that he's really, it's a body of his life work. Tim and I have known each other for a long time, and this is super passionate about it. I like to call Tim the expert at the next generation that's coming up. And so he's going to give you a high level of the book, but I want you to use the chat today not only to communicate with each other, put in there some things that you're hearing that stand out to you, maybe some statements that you want to post. But more importantly, if you have any questions for Tim, because we're going to spend a good part of our session today with Tim actually answering those questions for you and be able to communicate directly with you. I'll manage those. Keep yourself on mute, and we'll have team members that will let us know the questions, and we'll be pulling those out of there and asking those of Tim and then letting him answer that for us. Okay, so what I want to do is go ahead. We got a good room full of people. I love seeing where all you guys are from. I love the activity in the chat. But what I want to do is just give you a little bit of introduction to Tim and let you know kind of where his background is and where he's coming from. He's authored more than 35 books, and he's trained thousands of leaders, not only younger generations, but he's also trained thousands of leaders in organizations around the world. You see on there some of the ones that he's worked with: Delta, Home Depot, Chick-fil-A is not on there, but I know he does a lot of work with Chick-fil-A. And so just a guy that really spends a lot of time adding value, training, and developing other people, which leads me right into this. His passion is for leadership development. And since 1983, he's worked alongside John Maxwell. Some of you go, man, that was a long time ago. I'm not going to tell you how old I was, Tim, at that point in time, but I know that you and John have worked together for a long time. And so Tim and I have known each other for almost 20 plus years as well in John's organization. And so he's just an incredible leader. You'll see here, keynote, an author, how many leaders that he's spoken to. This is something that I want to take just a second on this screen. I actually talked to Tim as we were preparing for our webinar. I said, now, Tim, listen, you got to keep the cookies on the bottom shelf for me. I played football for a long time, and I didn't attend a lot of classes, okay? But I need to understand, what is this word? Do I pronounce it right? And he said, no, I've made this word up. So it is pracademic. This is the word. And he'll talk to you a little bit about that when I hand over the reins of control to him. But what I love about what Tim is bringing to us and has been bringing to leaders around the world is that it's all research-based. And if you have the book, or when you get the book after today's session, you'll see there's tons of research about generations that are in the book. And so before I turn it over to Tim, I want to make sure that you guys use the chat book. I'm adding more people in here as people are joining in on the webinar, but I want to make sure that you use the chat, put in their comments that you're hearing, things that stand out to you, questions that you have. Again, our team will be monitoring that for us. So Tim, I know you've taken some time out of your very busy schedule. You travel, you speak, you're writing, you lead an incredible team of people, but grateful for you to spend an hour with us today as we jump in here and you share some of the content with everybody. Now, before we get started, real quick, I want to make sure, Susan Davis, I see you on here. Will you take yourself off mute real quick? What is the screen that you see that everybody else would see? What do you see on there?
We've been talking about ethnic, gender, and income diversity for years. There's another kind of.
Oh, that's perfect. I wanted to test it before we threw it live to Tim. So Tim,
Yes.
take it away, buddy. Thank you very much.
Susan, thank you for beginning this webinar today for me. I do appreciate that. Hey, I'm honored to be in front of all of you. I love hanging around the Maxwell ecosystem. I was a part of it, for almost 40 years now. And I cannot say enough for what John Maxwell has done for me right out of college. I feel like I owe my life. And Chris, I feel like I owe so much to you as a friend and supporter and encourager. So we have this mutual admiration society going on here. Please forgive the syrupy language for the next hour. Hey, let me kind of catch you up real quick. I know many of you have heard me talk about this subject. We're going to do some new content today about this topic, but I want to give you some things to jot down. I definitely want to hear from you, so please do ask questions later, but we're going to have some call to action. I think we got some ideas that will be really engaging and fun at the end, so hang till the end and we'll get this done. So real quick, just to set up the dilemma, I continue to hear more and more people, old and young, in the workplace not knowing what language to use about, I don't get this person. You follow me? So every year we do an SEC career tour where we take student athletes from Southeastern Conference schools like Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee. We gather them together. And Chris, you'd love this. We spend time with the sharpest D1 athletes. They're great athletically and they're great academically. But we always ask the question, what's the scariest part about transitioning to your career? Well, you can imagine we get lots of answers, but can I give you one or two real quick that I just heard that I thought, oh my Lord. One very sharp female athlete said, I think I need to get over my fear of talking to older people. Can I say that again? 22 years old, 4.0, straight A's, great soccer player. I think I need to get over my fear of talking to older people. Now, what she was basically saying is, I've been in this echo chamber of 22-year-olds or 18 to 22-year-olds, and now I've got to venture out into this world of 42 and 52 and 62-year-olds. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. On the other hand, though, as I mix it up with hiring managers and CEOs and C-suite executives in general, I hear them saying things like, I don't get these young people. I don't even understand some of the words they use. In fact, one gentleman said to me, I've been accused of gaslighting. What's gaslighting? Well, I don't know if you know, but gaslighting is what we often do as older, seasoned veterans when some young team member says something silly, like they ought to know better, and we kind of give them an attitude and maybe even a tone that says, you're so stupid for not knowing. We make them feel foolish for not knowing, and that shuts them down. So my point is, we've got this gap, this generation gap that John Poppy talked about over 50 years ago, and we've got to clear the gap. So it's age diversity that we're talking about, not gender, not ethnicity, not income diversity. All those are important. We need to keep talking about them. But I want to give language to this elephant in the room that's looming over there in the corner. We all see it's there, but we don't know how to talk about it. It's the fact that we just think differently because we're different ages. Now, every generation of team member has something unique to offer. This is the whole point of the book. By the way, let me just say this, gang. My goal in this book is not that you read it cover to cover from page 1 to 250 or whatever it is. It's to be a reference guide. It's like an encyclopedia. You can pull it off the shelf on Thursday, then do it again on Monday and say, now I understand Gen Z. Now I understand millennials. Now I understand the boomers, those old folk over there. It's really just a guide to give you language and understanding about how they might be feeling and looking at things based on how and when they grew up, okay? So there are barriers. We're going to talk about the barriers. In fact, today I'm going to give you 7 really big ideas that I'd love for you to jot down that are really going to help you as talking points and maybe even a guide later. So I don't know if you know this. But while we've been talking about diversity as an issue for decades now, only 8% of American companies, only 8%, even recognize age diversity as a category of diversity. So we recognize all the others, but we don't realize, nope, it's a real thing. So it's time we break down these barriers and leverage the strengths. Gen Z, those young team members that are 21, 22 years old, right out of college, they've got something to offer. It's different. It's not experience, but it's intuition. They see where culture is going. We can give history lessons if we're over 40. They give prophetic lessons. They just see where social media seems to be going, where the latest app seems to be able to benefit my life, and maybe it could benefit this company. So let's jump in to 7 reasons why addressing workplace generational diversity is just vital for our organizations, okay? Here we go. Idea number 1. You're going to find, if you haven't found it already, that young and old at work can actually feel like a cross-cultural interaction. Think about it real quick. If you've traveled anywhere around the world, you know that when that plane lands and you hop off that jet, you're going to work harder at connecting with people over in that country, right? China, France, Germany, whatever, because you know, well, they probably speak a different language. They might have different customs over here, like driving on the other side of the road. They might have different values. Bingo. When I talk to someone right out of college, I can almost bank on the fact, different language, right? Different values, different customs. Bingo. So here's why I bring this up to you. Are you willing to do the work to connect with that 22-year-old like you would with that person from China 4, 5, 6,000 miles away? We need to do the work. It's not impossible, but it's going to require work, okay? Some of you have teenagers at home. You know what I'm talking about? It's work for that 15-year-old freshman in high school that she just is different than you. All right, you get the point. We've got to do the cross-cultural work to connect with older and younger generations. Idea number 2. A different kind of diversity can be this elephant in the room. I've already mentioned that to you, so I won't go long on this one. But you know that term, don't you? Elephant in the room. It's that big looming issue that, you know, people talk about the water cooler, but they never really have a meeting about it and make it official. I'm saying let's help organizations make this official. It's a thing, and it's not a bad thing, but it's a real thing. In fact, when I teach this stuff to organizations or consult or coach, I get them laughing about it at first. I think we need to be able to laugh at ourselves and go, oh my gosh, I'm such a dinosaur. By the way, let me illustrate right now. Do you realize it took another person a little bit younger than me to help me do this Zoom call today? I'm just saying, I'm not saying. Now, do I have other strengths? I think so, but we're not sure. The jury's out. But you know this. So let's leverage those grandkids. Let's leverage those young team members. You get the point, okay? Let's go to number 3. The third big idea is different generations, you all know this already, admit already that they're not going to see eye to eye. Look at the white blocks there. In a nationwide Market Watch survey, more than half the respondents admitted, I'm probably not going to get along with a colleague from a different generation. In other words, before I even start the job, I'm admitting I'm not going to get along with Nancy or Bob or Roger or whatever. So they're already suspecting it's going to be trouble. And I tell you what, I think we just don't want to do the work. I've already alluded to this. So what we're doing, going out into the marketplace with this big idea is, folks, you're going to have to do the work. And by the way, let me go back to 2020. You guys remember when the pandemic started and then those protests happened? I don't know what you thought about the protests, but I bet you thought something, either good or bad. And it was because there was a big divide racially in our country. I'm just saying, we don't know how to talk about it, but this divide is happening. And you know what I've noticed? It's often 2 older generations, Gen X and Boomers, and then 2 younger generations, Millennials and Gen Z, that divide. The 2 youngers, under 40, think a certain way, and the 2 olders, kind of, sort of, more or less think a certain way. And even though this is not a science, it is a social science. Do you hear what I just said? It's not a science, an exact science like a formula, but it's a social science. In fact, I would say it this way. Just like you'd never say all Democrats think alike or all Republicans think alike, but you learn a little bit about what they value but what they would say they might vote for, same thing. You learn a little bit about, oh, I see why at 25, you probably think a little differently than me at 48 or 58 or my age now, 63 years old. I feel this in my own family with my two children, both millennials. Bethany is 34, Jonathan's 30. I love them to pieces, but I'm telling you, I just don't think. And so we'll laugh at Christmas time at Dad, but I'm hoping to impart and build a bridge instead of a wall so I can impart. Okay, that's idea number 3. So here's the big looming question. How can we even hope to work together when we can't even understand each other? Well, we really can't. We've got to bring some level of understanding. This is rhetorical. You don't have to write it down. We've got to bring understanding so that we can leverage all 4 or 5 generations. Let me say something parenthetical that you don't need to write down, but I'm going to give you this at no extra charge. Do you all realize that we're living on planet Earth at a time when there are actually 7 generations alive and well right now? Because people are living longer, well into their 90s now, oftentimes, and mamas are still having babies. We've got the alpha generation on the youngest side. They're in elementary school. And then you got the senior generation. Tom Brokaw called them the greatest generation, that fought in World War II. You got to imagine we're different, we either walk away from each other or we say, we need to work. We need to work at this. I love talking to my Uncle Gene, who turns 99 this month, about World War II. He has memories. He's got stuff to teach me about resilience that I need to learn. Would you not agree with that? And I'm not even young. So what if we could take advantage? All right, let's keep going. This is idea number 4. And by the way, this is a big one. You may want to grab your pen on this one. As I talk to employers and employees about this subject of generational diversity, I have found there are 4 big barriers to really leveraging the strengths of each one. Okay, so let's put it this way. These are 4 hurdles we're going to have to jump if we're going to get to the end of the race here. Okay. So I'm about to give you these 4 barriers right now. They're not ideas you've never thought of, but maybe putting them together, you can leverage them yourself as you begin to coach, consult, teach, and get this content out. All right, so barrier number 1, we stereotype each other. This is probably the biggest one of all. I know you don't like to be stereotyped because you're human. Nobody likes to have a little bit of information on them and everybody's stereotyping. Oh, I know who you are. Well, neither do the other folks in your life. So we gain a little information on someone and we take mental shortcuts. That's what a stereotype is, a mental shortcut. We draw a conclusion. Kids today are fragile snowflakes, and that's just not true. Not all of them. Some of them are, but not all. So just know this is going to be a major one. We don't want to do the mental work. So we stereotype and pretty soon we got a divide going on. Okay. Barrier number 2, ego comes into play. I don't know how readily you are to admit that you have a little bit of an ego. I do. I hate it, but I do. I'm a male, and often males wrestle with this more than females. But our ego just won't let us learn from someone younger. We kind of say, how much job experience you got? Oh, 1 month? Okay. And well, their value too isn't their job experience. It's all this marvelous intuition that they've gathered because they've been on a smartphone their whole life that we could leverage for marketing or whatever. So just know experience is one thing, but we need experience and intuition. And I think if we can get them together, we really got something. Barrier number 3, we're just lazy. I've already talked about this in so many words already, but again, we're lazy. We don't want to do the work of connecting with someone unlike us. And by the way, have you heard these words? Kids today. Have we all said kids today? Do you know adults have been saying in one way, shape, or form, kids today for thousands of years? Socrates wrote way back BC, the children in my day are disrespectful to parents and they're lazy and they're self-centered. And I'm going, oh my gosh, we've been saying this forever. And by the way, our kids' kids are going to say it about them, or our kids, about their own children. So just know the laziness, we're going to have to fight this like it's an enemy. All right, the last big barrier is disrespect. I realize the word respect is as old as Aretha Franklin and maybe older, but can I just remind you, if I lead with respect, even if that young team member is 22 years old, it just echoes back to me. If I disrespect them, and I'm prone to disrespect, because I tend to think as an old guy, you got to earn respect. Folks, drop that idea for just a little bit and say, I'm not going to make them earn it. I'm going to lead with honor. I'm going to lead with respect. And I'm not making this up. I don't respect them for their 20 years experience. They don't have it, but I'm respecting them for, I'm so glad you bring your talent and your intuition to this team. Oh my goodness. Now we're going to have this reciprocal thing going on. Suddenly they like old Tim or old Susan or old whoever, okay? You get the point. I'll stop waxing eloquent here. But those are barriers we're going to need to bring to the attention of a possible client and say, do you have any of these going on? This is going to help you overcome it, okay? All right. Let's go to big idea number 5. We have 3 more to go real quick, and we're going to stop and let Chris talk, and then we're going to let you talk. I want to talk to you now about bridges instead of walls. So I'm not a neuroscientist, but I love social psychology. And what happens in us if we approach someone that is very different from us? In our case, let's talk about different generation. We tend to put a wall up instead of a bridge because, number one, walls are easier to build than bridges. Okay, I'm no engineer, but think about it. A bridge is take way more engineering to build than a wall. Okay, I've built a fence before. That's easy. We tend to build a wall because we don't want to do this work that I've been describing. And I'm saying, if you'll do the work of building a bridge, the payoff is stunning. People from different generations who build bridges of relationship that can bear the weight of honest disclosure just win in the end. So the book lobbies for this. In fact, in one of the chapters of the New Kind of Diversity book, I actually have a half a dozen conversations that are starters at a workplace. And one of them is bridge, not a wall. It's this very metaphor. How do we go about doing this? I love this phrase, how do we ditch the niche, right? We all get in our little niches of people that talk like us, vote like us, look like us, think like us. We got to get out of this. We've got to ditch the niche. And so this is a bridge, not a wall. Okay. Idea number 6. Oh, I love this one. Jot down the words by faith, if you must, the elder and the genius. Okay. So just a few years ago, a guy by the name of Chip Conley sold his hospitality company and made millions and ended up not knowing what he was going to do next in his 50s. Okay. So he's not a spring chicken, but he's not an old geezer either. Well, he ended up getting hired by Airbnb, and watch this. He was to be the coach for the CEO of Airbnb. He fell in love with his job because he said, I began to realize that every organization, now listen to this language, has modern elders and young geniuses. Can I say that again? Every organization has modern elders. Those are the people that are, seasoned veterans. They're no spring chickens, but they have some wisdom they've garnered. But then there are young geniuses. They may not have wisdom yet, but boy, do they just know where culture's going and what the next buyer or purchaser or customer is going to look like. The biggest value that I think, I meet with 2 young men on our team. I love our whole team, but Andrew is 30 years younger than me. Cam is 40 years younger than me. I'm quite embarrassed to say that right now, but do you know what? I learn every time I'm with them. And it's so much fun. They know we're going to laugh because I'm going to go, look at me. Am I even fit to work anymore? Now, I'm saying this tongue in cheek, but I want them to know I'm human and I realize I'm flawed, but they're so open to receive from me because I'm laughing. So we've got to somehow bring humanity back into the workplace and say, let's garner from the modern elders and the young geniuses. Okay. We can go back to that later in Q&A if you want, but let's go to the final big idea. And this is the last chapter of the book, and I absolutely love it, if I do say so myself. It's basically on reverse mentoring. Reverse mentoring. Now, if you've never heard this term, I think the first person that popularized it would have been 30 years ago, and it was Jack Welch. Remember Jack Welch, the CEO of General Electric, who became this iconic leader? He was noticing in the 90s that computers were the new thing at the workplace, and most of his senior level managers were old and didn't like this newfangled technology. They had a pad of paper and a pen. They were fine with that. They'd succeeded with that up until now. Well, the young MIT grads he was hiring totally got the computer. And so he put the older and the younger together in a reverse mentoring relationship. Now get this, this is so fun. In fact, I want to encourage you to do this yourself before you try to sell the idea to anybody else. He would get his, 60-year-old executive meeting with this 22-year-old new team member. They'd get together, and the first thing they would do was swap stories. He noticed you can always find something in common, whatever your age, if you swap stories. I'm from Iowa. Oh, I'm from Iowa. Or I love baseball. Okay, so you swap stories. And then the next thing you do is you add value to each other based on your strength. So the older veteran would say, here's how to succeed at this company. I've been here 25 years. But then that older veteran will say, now, would you teach me how to turn a computer on? Or something like that. I'm being silly here, and I'm telling you, we let each mentor the other. This is how the world works now. Both are going to bring value. Young geniuses, modern elders. The reverse mentoring is the secret. It's not the only secret. In fact, I give a whole bunch of secrets in the book, but this is a big idea that could be an epiphany for that company you consult with and win over. So I kind of close with that. All right. So this is the new book. You probably have seen. I know some of you haven't. Thank you. But Chris, I'm going to turn it back over to you. I think I'll automatically stop sharing. Is that true? Okay. If you start sharing, and I'll let you kind of take it from here before we do Q&A. Are you muted, Chris?
Thank you, Tim. Hey, we have a couple of questions that are already in the queue. I'm going to filter these questions in just a minute. This book that Tim's talking about came out on October 25th, and we're super excited with Maxwell Leadership as our publishing arm. This was our very first book that we published, and it was an honor for John and Tim to partner together on this, and so we released it on October 5th. So before I jump in and have Tim answer some of these questions for you, here's what I thought I'd do. I thought what I'd do is give you some feedback that's already out there for those that have grabbed the book and have purchased it on Amazon or from us or wherever they've gotten it from. It's already reached number 25 in the workplace culture category, which if you're familiar with Maxwell Leadership and our corporate division, that's really what we focus on. We focus on how do we help you enhance the culture inside the organization. And this is a big part of what we're doing. I heard Tim talk about that there are 7 generations alive and well today. We're seeing in the work that we're doing with organizations, we're seeing that there sometimes are 5 generations in the same work environment. And that brings a lot of complexity to that. And so here's what a couple of people are saying from the Amazon reviews that we pulled for today's session. Brings practical methods for bringing out the best in all of the generations. Melissa said you'll discover how to build bridges, not walls. Tim talked a little bit about that today when it comes to making generational diversity a strength on your team. Here's one from Cheryl: to ensure a cohesive and productive and effective team. How many would say with what's going on in the world today with what we call quiet quitting and productivity paranoia and all those things that come with the new challenge of the workforce, that we would need a more productive workforce? Here, Brian says it is amazing to get this kind of detailed view of all the generations. That comes from the research that's in the book that Tim provided for us. Here is provide strategies to build the empathy and connection strategies needed to get the best out of everyone. So you can see that this book is already moving. It just came out on October 25th. It's having an impact on people. I saw in the chat, someone said this works for organizations as well. It absolutely does. And we're working through developing some corporate training around that. So, hey, Tim, I have the first question for you. I have a couple. First question comes from Sheila. And Sheila says, how do you feel like a valuable part of an organization when you are older and the leader is younger, but the younger leader has the mentality that they are in charge and wants you to ask them permission before talking to others about ideas, whatever might be inside the organization? How do you go about that? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Oftentimes I hear it from both sides. This scenario you just described, Chris, but then also maybe a young leader that's in charge goes, I feel like I'm leading people as old as my parents and I don't know how to do this, This may not be rocket science I'm about to give you. In fact, it's not. But I have found when I'm in this situation, or when I have been in this situation, I want to lead with humility. So even though I'm older and they're younger and I feel like they got a little arrogance and I want to tell them, if I lead with humility and I respect the fact that they have a position, of authority, my humility will win them over. It's amazing how I've noticed when I underspeak about myself, like I don't talk as good as I am, but I underspeak, people want to fill that cup up themselves. If I overspeak about myself, I'm awesome. People want to go, no, you're not, Bob, that sort of thing. So humility just is a marvelous secret, I think, to winning others over, whether they're much younger or much older. So I don't know if this is a good answer, but I do think this is where we begin, is with humility. I'll just stop there, Chris. I don't know. You may want to add, Chris, because you've been on both sides of this as well. You want to add anything yourself?
I don't, but I will tell you this. I think what you talked about, we hear it on both sides. That is 100% of the case. The number one issue in organizational culture that we deal with is really around communication. I think anybody on this webinar would say, no doubt about it, we have a communication issue. So not only does that come from the top down from our leaders, but it comes from the bottom up as well. Yeah. And just opening up those lines of communication is a big challenge. Then you add the generational diversity, and then it complicates it. So you got to be aware of it. But we do hear it from both sides. Here's the next question. This comes from Susan. Yes.
I'm sorry. One more quick thought. If you're jotting down notes, I mentioned humility. There's actually 3 words that I find myself using. I did this talk with Ford Motor Company recently, and they asked the same question. Here's the 3: humility, respect, and curiosity really help lubricate friction. If I stay curious, I want to keep learning, and I respect the other person, even if I have a hard time doing it. And then humility, I'm telling you, it's almost like a magic wand. It really is. Okay, I'll stop.
No, that's good. Thank you for interrupting me. It's good ad. Yeah. All right, next question. This is from Susan. If you are a Gen Xer born in 1971, would you reverse mentor up or down? Which would be more beneficial, or is there a difference from mentoring up and mentoring down? What does that look like?
Yeah, I actually think you have a unique opportunity to do both. If I were you and I had the discretionary time, I'd enter into a reverse mentoring with a younger person, and I'd also find maybe a 60-year-old who's maybe a dozen year or 10 or 12 years older than you, and I'd enter into both. So I'm doing this right now. I've got 6 people I'm pouring into that are younger. And then I've actually got 3 levels. I've got a group of midlife young men that I'm meeting with, talking through Strength to Strength. It's a book that we just are going through. And then I'm in some with older folks. So I'm often bringing the younger perspective, and I'm going, is this true? I'm 63, but they're older and they're needing what I have to offer. It's so much fun. So the answer is both.
Okay, good. The next question is, you talk about being able to it says cross-communicate, cross-develop different generations. Of the work that you've done so far, what are the benefits of that inside the organization? Have organizations seen financial benefits, seen efficiency benefits. Like when you begin to take this approach, do you have any case studies or examples that come to mind where you've seen organizations really go after this and then the benefit for them from an organization standpoint?
Absolutely. So first of all, let me talk about research, and then I'm going to talk about my own personal experience. So quantitative and qualitative data here. The quantitative data shows when you do welcome diversity of any kind, generational or ethnicity, it does bring a little bit more friction at first because people don't see the same way, but it eventually enables you to reach more people. So the customer base grows when the diversity base grows inside the organization. Okay. Here's a personal illustration. As this book was releasing last month, October 20, I guess, month and a week ago, at our organization, Growing Leaders, which now is merging with Maxwell, I found that I met with Gen Zers and then millennials and then Xers and then boomers. We found secrets to market to each of our different demographics. So Gen Zers told me, here's what you ought to say to my people, to sell this book as a young buyer. Oh, Xers said, here's how you do it. So I think the advantage is you want to reach a bunch more people, employ those same demographics in the workplace. So that would be one big idea. I don't know if you want me to go on, Chris, but I think that's, it's harder, but it's worth it. That's the thing. It's harder, but it's worth it to pay the price, to invite all into the conversation.
No, that's good. And then the final question, Tim, for you comes from Daniel, which is when you're dealing with younger people that you are leading and you fundamentally believe that their point of view is not helpful for them or the organization.
Yeah.
You have any suggestions on how to bridge that gap and connect with them when your point of views are drastically different and their point of view is not necessarily helpful from your perspective for the organization?
Yeah, it's a great question. A legit one that probably deserves an hour answer. I'm going to do it in a few minutes. Two things come to my mind. First is when I'm in that scenario, I have found that I default to something that seems to work. And I do it because of how my brain is wired. I guess I've just been doing this now for 40 years. I will first go to, do you see any challenges in your point of view? So I'm asking a question. I'm not telling them that's a stupid idea. Do you see any challenges? Sometimes they'll say no. Sometimes they'll think about it for the first time and go, well, yeah, I guess it could end up leading to this. And now we're already going down that trail of there may be a negativity to your idea. But then I will tell a story. And when you can have a story in your back pocket that illustrates a very similar scenario and how it went awry, and they see, and then now you're helping them. You're saying, I just didn't want you to fall into that same trap. You're not against them, you're for them, and you're not wanting to. So think of or research and find a story that's similar to the scenario they're in and the point of view they have and how it might have gone bad. And now you've got a story to tell rather than a finger to point. I like that. You've got a story to tell, not a finger to point. So let me tell you a story that I put in the book that might really be helpful. I talk about Maggie and Antonio. Maggie is a hiring manager at a restaurant chain, okay? Antonio was a young team member in his early 20s who was hired by Maggie. And in the interview process, they're bantering back and forth. He's answering questions. But before the interview was over, Maggie made up her mind, I want to hire this young man. So she began to go through the values and the policies of the restaurant. He nodded and agreed, okay, yeah, fine. So she hires him. A few weeks into his employment journey, she notices that Antonio has a very large tattoo on his arm. Now, he always had it, and he agreed in the interview when she brought up our restaurant happens to have a no tattoo policy. He didn't say, oh, I should tell you, I have a tattoo. He happened to have a shirt that covered the tattoo because he was no dummy, So he waits till he gets hired and hopes she's not going to fire me over this, will she? Well, now think about it. She's in a quandary, isn't she? Maggie's in a quandary because she's got this company policy and she's actually representing the company as a leader, But now she's got this young whippersnapper that she's a little frustrated with because he was dishonest in the job interview. So she meets and she tries so hard to keep this redemptive and restorative. But she said, Antonio, why didn't you tell me in the job interview? Well, he thought she was attacking him. You're attacking my very identity. This tattoo is part of my identity. And now she goes, oh my gosh, no, I'm not. I mentioned this early on. You could have been honest. Why weren't you honest? Well, he kept saying, you're attacking me, you're attacking me. So they reached an impasse. They ended the meeting. They both went their separate ways. But Maggie still knows, I got a problem here. Because minimally, think about this. Every other team member now knows the guy's got a tattoo. She wouldn't let us have a tattoo, but he's got a tattoo. Is she going to make exceptions? And then what other exception might, you know this, you guys are leaders. Now what are we going to do next? That's going to be against the. So Maggie was brilliant in how she ultimately handled this mess. This would have been sometime later, like several days later. She asked to meet with Antonio. And by the way, did you notice she asked to meet with him? She's the boss. She could have said, I demand you get in here or I'm going to fire your butt. She could have said that. She asked to meet with him. And she said, Antonio, I'm so sorry this has turned into a big battle. I never wanted that. But I really do have to have you honest and in line with our company policies. So I'll make you a deal. And here's the deal. She said, you're a great team member. I don't want to lose you. So I want to keep you on this team. But you and I are going to have to get in front of the entire team at the end of the shift. And you're going to have to apologize. And then I'm also going to talk to you and say how much I appreciate you and want to keep you on this team. But we're going to meet in the middle. You're going to wear a long sleeve shirt and you're never going to show that tattoo. We're keeping the policy. And then she said, and I'm going to call corporate and see if we might change this policy one day down the road. But they got a standing ovation. He apologized to everybody and said, I'm so sorry, I wasn't honest, blah, blah, blah. Maggie says, we're not changing the policy. We're making an exception in his case, but we're not going to make other exceptions. But I'm calling corporate to see if maybe, just maybe, this might be a change down the road. Here's what I love about the story. Maggie's not perfect. In fact, you might have picked apart several things that you didn't like about the story, but she valued relationships over rules, even though we need rules. This younger generation team member saw, wow, she appreciates me. She loves me appropriately, as a boss. She wants me on the team. So he's leaning in now because she's leaning in. And I feel like that was a way that two different generations were able to move forward and keep him as the team member. But he realized, I got to be honest from this point in. So I'm hoping that something in that answer was helpful and relevant to you as you think about your situation.
No, it's a great story. I appreciate you sharing that. I did say that was the last question. We have a bunch of questions coming in. There's one that I want to one more I want to ask you, Tim, if you don't mind. And this it's a great question around the focus of how organizations are trying to get younger, are working to make sure that the younger generation is prevalent inside their organization. And so the question comes as, what are your thoughts about balance around generational engagement inside the organization? So our company focuses heavily on the young generations, trying to bring the youth to the business, but by doing so, they're excluding other generations. Wow. So how do you, in working with organizations, how do you encourage the balance of the generation engagement inside the organization?
That's another great question. The first thing that comes to my mind is what I talked about earlier. We need to leverage or employ the strengths of each one. So maybe your older generations that aren't feeling quite as valued or focused on, you could say, hey, I need you as a coach. I need you as a modern elder. Lord knows these young whippersnappers in here need modern elders in their life. So you're calling them up. You're challenging them. Play the role you're meant to play. I know you'd like it differently. Chris, you know what I think of? Over the years, if any of you are people of faith and you go to church, well, I want church with the old hymns being sung every day. Well, I like the new worship courses, whatever. There's always divides in every context. We need to tell the older generations, play the card you've got. Be the coaches for the future that they're going to need. Because one day those young 20-somethings are going to need to be the coaches. You need to model the way. So I know that's not a complete answer, but I'm thinking that's what I would do in your shoes. Tell the elders, you are so valuable. We would be a mess if you weren't in here guiding us and giving us a sense of boundary and keeping us focused and so forth and so on. But then you keep your focus on the future and where the company's going. You want to add to that, Chris? Anything?
I think when you talk about culture, one of the things that we work on is how do you build a common language that everybody begins to understand. And again, that goes back to what we were all just talking about a minute ago around communication. And I think that you have to have a common language that goes both ways, and that you have to have the diversity. We talk a lot about in culture with Maxwell Leadership about inclusive leadership. We would all agree that we need to focus on the DE&I world that's out there, and we need to become more diverse. But I think leaders need to become very aware of becoming more inclusive. And by doing that, that would be generations that are younger, that would be generations, that are older. And so that's what I would add to that. So, well, good. Tim, I'm gonna stop you right there. Okay. We have a bunch of other questions coming in, but those that are familiar with the Maxwell Leadership, one of the things we want to do is we want to add value to you. We want to keep giving you content. But John believes that it's in the process. How do we help you? Yeah. How do we help you work through this? How do we help you educate your team members? And what does that look like? And some of you are listening to Tim and saying, man, we have that problem in our organization. We have that problem in our community. Like, I need to figure out how to be able to solve that. And you have that pain point. And so what I want to do is share with you over the next couple of minutes how you can take that next step to be able to open up this conversation, to begin to communicate about the diversity of generations that are in your workforce. And so one of the things I thought I would do is here's some benefits of it that end up happening in the generational diversity issue inside your workplace. When you address it, there's no doubt about it, helps you get the most out of the strengths of each one of your group and your team. That's that inclusive leadership that I was just talking to you about. It fosters that effective communication, a little bit of a theme that's coming out of our conversation today versus the isolation of people. The last thing we want to do is bring people on our team and then try to change them. We want people to have their own point of view and to be open to that and their perspective. The other thing is, this helps you when you identify this and talk about it, build the bridges as Tim talked about, so that the team feels connected. Connecting and building relationships with your team members is the foundation to increasing your influence inside the organization, which will affect the culture. And then again, here, just makes it understanding and having the research behind Tim's work allows you to connect with people and to learn from both those that are older than you and those that are younger than you. So we wanted to put together an opportunity for you that'll help you with tools to be able to address what we're talking about. There's no doubt about it. The organizations that we've seen really attack this have a competitive advantage, not only in the hiring process, the recruiting and hiring process, but also in the way that their organizations are running and how effective they're becoming. And I will tell you this, with what we as organizational leaders and leaders in our community have been through the last couple of years, it's going to continue to ebb and flow over the next 12, 24, 36 months. And we're going to have to become more effective with our team members. And so we decided, hey, let's put together a corporate pack for the business leaders that we can offer world-class training. Now, here's what we're doing right now. Tim and I were talking about this morning. We are in beta mode right now. We are developing a training course that'll be a full-day training to be broken up into 4 modules that we're going to be able to bring to organizations with facilitators that'll be certified by Tim on this content and to be able to help you develop a game plan and facilitate that content. That is coming. We want to provide some tools with you and for you. We're going to do that today, so you have that going forward. And we want to make sure that this helps you get ahead of growing, but often this unrecognized issue that you can be able to address it. So this is again, first time that we're doing this. We wanted to be able to bring something to you that made sense for your team and for your organization. We wanted to be able to have a group to get some feedback from on impact and testimonies. So we developed a corporate pack that you'll see here is $9.99, and it includes 3 things that I think are very, very relevant to us that are leading teams. Number 1, it includes a full case of Tim's new book, so 20 copies of that. We also developed a custom team, what we call GQ. Now, some of you go, oh, I know what GQ means. No, we're talking about the generational quotient, okay? And so we've developed an assessment that not only you can take personally, but also that you'll be able to administer to your team and then run a team report. So you have the dynamics of the generation on there. And then we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about this in just a minute. Tim in January is going to do a new kind of diversity workplace health event. This will be a virtual event that'll be open to everybody inside your team. If the leader signs up for this corporate package, everybody in your team will be able to dial in remotely to be able to attend that. One of the things that we did for today's webinar is if you'll go to maxwellleadership.com, I have no idea how that red line got on there, maxwellleadership.com/Tim Elmore. We have a form up there for you. And if you'll fill out that form, our team will be in touch with you to talk about what does this look like? How can we help you? How can we take the next step? Is there coaching around it? They'll guide you through that. Let me take just a minute though. Some of you may say, okay, that's great. You talk to me a little bit more about each one of those areas that come with the corporate pack. So I want to go through each one of them just quickly. So it's not just 20 books. Let's say there's leaders on here that have 40, 60, maybe you have 200 people in your team, okay? We will definitely discount those for you guys, and they come in cases, so we will be able to handle that. It's not just the 20. When it comes to this GQ generational quotient assessment, as I mentioned earlier, each client is going to have a unique portal that we're going to set up specifically for you, where you'll be able to assign the assessments to your team members and then access the results. It'll give you some insights on that report as well. And you'll be able then to assign and see the results virtually, and then you can share that with your team. And then what we love about this is having conversations and communicating with your team about the results that you're seeing there. And then finally, Tim, on this training event he's going to do in January, that comes with this. Every member on your team, there's no cap on attendees, no matter how many people you have in your organization. He's going to talk a little bit deeper than what he did today on some of the insights. And I think it'll be a great way for you to help educate, equip. You know, one of the things that I love about Tim doing this is we are seeing more now than ever that one of the top 3 reasons people are staying with organizations is that they're investing in and they're developing them along their career path. Yeah. Maybe it's directly tied to what they're doing. Maybe it's not. But just the fact that leaders, we are being proactive and providing an opportunity to develop our team members is going to keep them engaged. And so this is a great way for you to do that in January. So once again, those of you that have just a desire and you say, man, we are missing something when it comes to the generation gap that's in our organization. This is the offer for those that will be available to the end of the year for month of December. And if you'll go to maxwellleadership.com/Tim Elmore, you'll fill out a form that'll be submitted to our team. They'll follow back up with you, answer any questions, and walk you through the process of what this offering looks like. And then again, too, maybe not even this offer, you go, man, I want more than this. I do want that training. I do want to talk about what do these modules look like, the intensives that we're developing. They'll be able to answer that question for you as well. We are working through that beta. We're going to have it ready for the end of Q1, but we would love to just take your information, keep it with us, and then follow back up with you when it's ready. Well, Tim, I want to just say thank you. One of the things we want to do with our webinars when we add value and then make the offer is make sure we end on time. I know you invested an hour. Those that jumped on the call, thank you so much for investing your time to develop yourself, to learn a little bit more. And just know our goal, we believe at Maxwell Leadership that everyone deserves to be led well. That means every generation. And so if we can help you in any way, add value to your team members, then just reach out to us, let us know, and we'll get in touch with Tim if we can't answer the question for you. and be able to serve you in that way. So guys, I hope you have a great rest of your Thursday. For those of you that joined us, thank you again. Tim, thank you. And we will talk to you guys soon.